Hello, everyone. Today I will have a guest from India, Aseem Trivedi. He's a political cartoonist. You may have seen his cartoons recently on Turkey. I wanted to ask him about what he does and why he does cartoons about on Turkey, on whether he sees any benefit in activism via cartoon. And I'm hoping that this will give you a sense of a tool to make your voice heard. Asim, welcome to my YouTube channel. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm good.
Asim, you're from India and you live in India, in Delhi. And when I looked into your profile, I've seen that you are not a cartoonist. You are also a political activist, a human rights defender as a cartoonist. Can you tell us a bit about yourself? What do you do? You know, like what you have done previously as well, you know, and what would you like to, how would you like to define yourself?
Well, I'm basically a cartoonist, political cartoonist, and before I joined the campaigns and activism, I used to work for the simple newspapers as every cartoonist do, and then I became a part of a movement against corruption. It was called India Against Corruption. And I made a website called Cartoons Against Corruption and started drawing anti-corruption cartoons. And then the government banned my website. They got me arrested in the charges of sedition and a few more. But fortunately, I got a good support from the people, from the activists, from the journalists here, and I got released. So now, since 2 years, I do cartoons on human rights issues. I started with Rai Padavi, a blogger from Saudi Arabia. I did 50 cartoons as a symbolic protest for the 50 lashes that he was flogged with. And then I started to draw cartoons on different issues, defending many human rights defenders, writers, and bloggers who are facing any kind of charges, torture, or imprisonment.
How did you come across, let's say, the issues in Turkey, and how did you start doing cartoons about Turkey?
Well, at first, because I'm a cartoonist, so I got some updates about Musakar. I know about Musakar.
The Cumhuriyet cartoonist Musakar, who was imprisoned by Erdogan.
Yeah. I have already heard about him because a few years ago he has been charged for some cartoons by this Erdogan government only. So when I heard about him, I became more interested, and I got a lot of I got to know about many journalists who are being jailed, who are being chased by the government or something. So I decided to do a series on the journalists being jailed or being tortured, harassed by the government. So I did a series on the journalists. I did 10 cartoons there, and then I learned about these 10 human rights defenders who have been arrested in Istanbul. So I did the portraits of them, and then some of my friends actually they told me about this issue that the women are being jailed just after the deliveries, the mothers, and then I decided to do. He suggested me that I should do some cartoons on that issue, and then he helped me with the data and all, and then I did the cartoons. Yeah.
You're generally interested in drawing cartoons about, let's say, corruption and human rights related issues.
Yeah.
But before we go into any particular details, I would like to ask, how does, doing a cartoon helps in human rights defending? Does it work? Does it raise awareness? How does it work?
Yeah, somehow it works because, you cannot just repeat the same thing all the time with the text only. Because, as I told you, I did 50 cartoons for Rai Padavi. So you can share these 50 cartoons, repeatedly many times, and because all of them are different and saying the same thing in a different way. So they all are, they attract people towards them and they want to know more about the issue. So it gives you an opportunity to say the same thing in different and interesting ways, and to attract people who are really not aware about them, and they see the cartoon and they want to know more. And somehow, I mean, cartoons are the visual medium, and they go well with the social media. uh, Especially with Twitter, I see that when they need to campaign about some issue, these visuals, these cartoons, because sometimes they are funny and sometimes they have kind of satire in them, and sometimes they are sad also. So they attract people, and they want to know more about the issue. And also, I mean, when you want to campaign, any kind of arts, whether it is video, it is music, or it is art, visual art, all of them are helpful for the campaign. So they make it quite, uh, textured, quite interesting, and quite, uh, and quite generalize the things because people can relate themselves the issues.
I can see, especially on Twitter, like rather than giving names of people who are arrested, the way you do, can work much better, because then you put a face next to a name and it becomes more human. And in your case, you can probably highlight the part that you want to highlight with the images, and it may work. Is there any particular cartoon, like, do you have favorites? Do you have any cartoon that has a slightly better story, or a better, appreciated better by the audience?
Yeah, some of the cartoons, like some of my cartoons from my series for against corruption, cartoons against corruption, and there were a few cartoons that were really appreciated by people, and they got viral, and I also love them because I try to redraw my national symbols of India. So it makes them interesting when you are redrawing your national symbols, you are playing with them, and you're saying that you see that our country has been changed a lot due to corruption, so our symbols should also be changed. So I mean, some people are not happy with them, and some people are happy with them.
About the, let's say, Musa Kart and human rights defenders in Turkey, and the women who are arrested after their birth, the cartoons, those cartoons are not the most dangerous ones in your portfolio.
One of them I love, actually, this is here. Let me take it. I mean, I like this cartoon. I don't know. I'll not say that it's something very great, but I like this cartoon because I was trying to draw the journalist who are in jail. Then I tried to draw a columnist, that how he looks in his regular column in the newspaper and how he looks in his jail, because a lot of journalists are in solitary confinement, I heard. So I tried to draw him in solitary confinement and tried how he looks here. So because text is not here, that I added to some software. So it would say like daily column for, I mean, before emergency and after the state of emergency. So these are the two pictures.
I see.
So I like this cartoon. Yeah.
And most of them, as I see, are, especially one in the corner, I can see it's about Turkey, and I've remembered that from your work is like a prison, and behind that the journalists. I think that's one of them.
Yeah.
And
this is I tried to depict a scene from, if you have seen the movie 300. So
yes,
there's
this
this
is
scene
Turkey.
where the king, he kicks the opponent, says, "This is Sparta." So here he's trying to kick the freedom. He's Erdogan, and he's trying to kick freedom, or the liberty, or whatever you say, and he's saying, "This is Turkey." This is a cartoon. If you see it, there's a journalist, and he's waiting for his trial to be started, because a lot of journalists then were, really waiting for their trial to be started. They were not even produced before the court.
Yeah. Especially some of them waited 8 months to be heard. Then after first heard, like a few months prolonged, and heard, like they are giving another date to be heard again in the future. So they are already in prison more than a year. It is actually a sentence, effectively. And there is one more on the right bottom corner, where how we see them and how they see us, sort of a
this is about journalists, because all the journalists, they have accused them of being being supportive to terrorists, they say. So I draw how we see the journalists, and this is how Erdogan sees the journalists, because when he sees them, he sees them as terrorists.
Did you draw this after there was a German interview with Erdogan, a German journalist interview with Erdogan, and he clearly told them, if you are interviewing terrorists, meaning like what we consider as terrorists, then you are a terrorist as well. You are aiding the terrorists. You are propagating for them, and you are a terrorist as well. So I thought, like it's one of the ones that explains
that
very well.
represent that idea. Actually, this is very terrific because anyone who is talking about them, I mean, then the whole role of journalism is, is in danger because maybe he doesn't have the proper sense. What is journalism all about? It is not about being someone who are, talking about. This is the work of journalists to talk about each and every thing that is happening in the society, whether it's good, whether it's bad.
One last question I want to ask you, Asim, is many listeners. I myself I'm volunteering for Amnesty and a couple of more, like refugee-related charities in my local town, and I advise people to do similar stuff. But in terms of, for instance, voicing your concerns with cartoons, with blogs, with anything, any way that you can produce, can you tell a few words about why it is important, or is it important? Like, does it work to write a blog about an injustice that's going on in Turkey? Would you advise my listeners or my viewers on how to raise awareness and how to raise issues that they care about?
I mean, we should really do it because sometimes I do feel that it doesn't make much impact, and a cartoon cannot change the situation. But it is not just a cartoon. It is a part of a bigger campaign because all the people are doing something. So this something, these very little things, they compile up and make something bigger. So this is why I think doing something is important because I can do it very easily. I'm a cartoonist and I can sit in my home. I can draw a cartoon about any issue. This is, a few minutes job for me. And, and because, I cannot do anything physically, which can be supportive to these people who are being persecuted. But through my art, I can at least, portray, I can at least, explain, draw their pain, their agony, and the sufferings they are going through. Or maybe I can raise voice against the dictatorship of these people who are really, being. So I think that we at least should try with whatever we are good at. Maybe writing, maybe, as you are doing with the videos, and with anything that is a bit different from the other. I mean, it may add some layers into the campaign. It may give it a bit more depth, a bit more, it may make them a bit more interesting maybe for the layman who is not into it actually. And because I know how I became interested. It was just Rai Badawi campaign. A lot of
Yes.
people just started writing about Rai Badawi, started supporting.
And he's a blogger, isn't he?
Yeah, but he is still in jail. You see.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes we underestimate what a blog can achieve, but the government really knows what it can achieve. So the fact that in certain countries like Saudi Arabia, the bloggers are getting a lot of punishment should tell us something. Like how important their contribution or how scary their contribution can be. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. In the same way, we can understand that why it is so important to write to do because they're not allowed to do. And if we are allowed to do, if we are in a state, in a situation where we can write, where you can do a video, where you can make a song or something, then you should do. You must use your art because you are privileged enough to use it for the good of people, for the good of yourself, for the good of the cause that you believe in, I guess.
I see. One more thing I should tell this to you is that I know there is more than 17,000 women in jail, and I know at least 668 children who are with their mothers or with their fathers, but mostly with their mothers in jail with them as well. But and I also was aware of the fact that the government is illegally, because it's a crime in Turkish law that you can't actually arrest like pregnant women. You can't imprison them because it is actually sentencing the child to it is sentencing the child, the baby as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there are rules against it, but it is happening. But after you draw those pictures, it become more visual in my eyes, that I now, as if I know them. It's like I have those, when you look at this little summary and with the drawing next to it, I find it very helpful. So on behalf of those women and the people who in the wider context who are suffering, I would like to thank you to raise this awareness. And I wanted to host you and bring your work into attention of people who would be watching me. And I will promote your Twitter page as well, hopefully, so you will be having a little more audience. Thank you very much for joining to my YouTube discussion, and thank you very, very much for sharing your answers, your story, and your perspective on cartooning and human rights defending.
Sure, I'll try my best to do it, and thank you so much for inviting me, giving me a chance to talk to people, to share about my things. Yeah, so much.
Thank you very much. Let me know if you ever draw me, yeah, because
Yeah,
I would like to see
sure,
that.
sure, I'll do something.
You can ignore this earphones in that one.
I
It is
will.
just to avoid the echo, because we are having some sound problems.
Yeah, I understand.
Dear listeners, this was Aseem Trivedi from India, a political rights activist and a cartoonist for a long term, who stand against the corruption and who also draw attention to human rights abuses around the world. And thank you very much for listening us all.